Back on the lash with Inspector Morose. Back on the lash with Inspector Morose. Back on the lash with Inspector Morose. There, I got the title right then. Okay? Right. Okay, so we made a reference the other day on the website to having a lot of fun writing the story Dead on the Line, which is the third story in book 3. Back on the lash with Inspector Morose. Back on the lash with Inspector Morose. So we've decided to give you a little sample of that just to excite you that little bit for now. Now, as you know, I've been having a lot of problems working with Howard lately, so I've decided to just get rid of him completely. It's much easier working without him. I work better in a writing partnership though, so I've decided I'm going to have to bring something along, so I've brought Wurzel Gummidge along with me to help me out for this. So here he is to help me. Okay, so we are going to read an extract. You remember how to read, don't you? You're going to have to just do your best. Okay. So this is taken from, starting from page 6 and working forward. That's exciting. From Dead Online, from book 3, all together now. Back on the lash with Inspector Morose. Okay, here we go.
Is this taken from Back on the Lash with Inspector Morose?
No.
Okay.
Harris dropped his boss off at the unguarded Victoria Wines and, checking with him that he had the wrong address, drove off with the windows down and the windscreen wiper fluid nozzle bent round into the car to get rid of the smell. It didn't take long to get to the scene of the shooting. He flashed his card at the new kid on duty at the door, who saluted him with a fascist full-arm salute, and hurried in to find that idiot White already at work with his camera. Harris, entering, noticed first a certain pathologist hard at work, or what passed for work anyway.
"Robbie!"
shouted Max.
"How are you doing? Fog still on the tine, eh?"
"Aye, sir. A message from the Chief Inspector. He says, 'Max, you old horse fondler.' There was also some mention of something vile you did with wombats, but I can't remember that."
"Probably for the best. Young White here has been taking some photos. Got an art project on or something."
"Not enough light,"
muttered White, and going to the curtains pulled the lot off the rail.
"Still not enough light,"
he muttered, and grabbing a fire axe demolished the wall adjoining the window.
"That's better."
As the plaster and brick dust settled, Harris asked,
"Didn't you bring your flash, man?"
"Sorry, Sarge, I forgot. And I forgot the vim as well. All those bloodstains and nothing to get them up with."
Methodically, he photographed the body, the gaping wound, the blood on the carpet, and the position of the corpse in relation to the rest of the room, in relation to the city of Birmingham, and finally in relation to the planet Saturn. Then he called the rest of the coppers over and took a photo of them at various angles with the corpse, posing like hunters with the corpse, and finally a group shot and selfie.
"Now one with my wife,"
he called. Sadly, his wife was in Australia, anything to get away from him, so they had to be photographed with WPC Soames, providing further ammunition for his wife's forthcoming divorce case.
"And now can I have one with the murderer?"
There was a pause.
"Oh, well, just an idea."
"Bright young man, that,"
observed Max to Harris.
"I saw what he did there, trying to snare the killer."
"Aye, man, he'll go far in the force,"
replied Harris, adding to himself.
"Hopefully the further the better, like Siberia."
There was a crash outside, and a large ornate plant pot designed by Capability Brown fell over and shattered. There was a cry of, "Oh, fuck that piece of shit," and then a, "Whoops, there goes the rose bush."
"OK, lads, pack up soon. Morose is here,"
sighed Robbie. He knew Morose didn't like messy, bloody scenes like this, and he went outside to greet his boss. Morose clapped an arm round his sergeant, and thus managing to keep upright, asked, "What have we got here, Mick?"
"It's Harris, sir."
Morose sobered up at once. "Jesus, what's happened to Harris?"
"No, sir, it's..."
"If any spineless bastard has touched a hair of my sergeant, I'll plant his face so far into his head that it'll fall out of his arse."
"Sir, I'm..."
"Where is he? Is he safe? Talk to me, you blithering idiot." Harris punched his boss in the face like I punch Howard in the face. The boss mysteriously fell over. Morose's brain fogged a bit, then cleared, and he saw... miracle. It was Sergeant Harris, unharmed. "Harris, baby, I thought you'd been done in. That cretin of a sergeant who looks just like you said you'd been filled in and blotted out." Harris played along. Anything for some peace.
I am here, and so are you.
Well, that's splendid. Let's get pissed to celebrate your return.
We're here to take a peek at the shooting, sir.
Oh, yes, well, let's go in.
We think it's suicide, sir, and it's all a little bit messy. Looks like a vampire's picnic, man.
Max looked up to officially note Morose's arrival.
No chance of us doing the ventriloquist act, end of. We still haven't found most of his head. Young Gone Mad is having a go at reconstructing it, but no, Saul, that's his cat's bowl, not his cranium.
He tutted and took a quick glance around the room. His eyes eventually caught Morose's.
It all has to be within wheelchair reach, but I can't find it yet.
I'll get the old booze sniffer onto it. Morose, doing a remarkably good impression of a bloodhound, sniffed around the room, out into the hallway, and the back of WPC Soames' trousers for some reason. It's no good, I'm drawing a blank here,
Aye, sir.
uttered Harris.
Possibly could we get on with the case then?
It's just our luck,
Muttered Max, brushing some bone splinters off his overalls.
First really good carking we've had in ages, and the concert teetotaler.
Tell Weird, unless he gets some top-quality hooch down here, we're not solving this one. I can easily start a good fight as an off-licence, or down our Jeff's place. Quick frame-up and all you can drink. Hey, make it Jeff and I might
Aye,
inherit.
sir, shall we just have a look at this one first?
Well, I'm going outside for a game of conkers. There's no murder and no booze. This is a shit party. You coming, Max?
Only if I can use my 99er, end of.
You soak that in vinegar, you cheat. So saying, they both left. Soames, White, Gone Mad, and the Socko team all looked at Robbie. Soames coughed.
Sir, can we?
Robbie gave in.
Aye, just for 10 minutes, mind, and then straight back to work. Don't make me come and get you.
Conkers at the ready, they joined Max and Morose on the lawns outside. Robbie was left alone in the room. It was true. There was no murder here. This was suicide, poor fella. Very sad, but there you go. So the routine side of the job began. He entered the kitchen to find Nurse Clark cradling a cup of coffee and staring vacantly at the wall.
I'm sorry, miss, I just need to ask a few questions, like, you found Mr.
Kramer? Joseph Kramer? Yes. I popped out to throw a brick through a telephone engineer's windscreen. I had to chase him some distance, and when I got back, I found this.
Aye, when you say you found this, I take it you found it like this. I mean, half his bastard head blown off, blood all over the walls, like brain and bone kicking the floor.
She gulped back a tear. Yes.
I mean, it's fucking awful in there, man.
I know, Sergeant. I discovered it.
I'll be having nightmares tonight, and me puts me right off me eel pie and mash, that.
Sergeant!
I'm just saying, like, couldn't you tell? Don't a bit, man.
No, Sergeant! You and the forensics people have to come in first.
Aye, I suppose so. It doesn't help matters when you're coming to work to see that, man. So who was he anyway? Any reason he felt like redecorating the walls, like? Knocks me sick, that.
It didn't do him many favours either, Sergeant.
Aye, his choice, but...
He was terminally ill, Sergeant. He had a progressive illness. Let me give you his doctor's details.
Terminal? Nothing contagious. Only that room is caked. I don't know if I said.
I don't think you can catch the bullet that killed him, Sergeant. Take his doctor's details.
Aye, well, I'm throwing these overalls right out, man. I'm glad he's not washing these. Coward, man. Fucking last, man.
His doctor's name is Derek Blake.
I'll be sure I don't go to him with a sore throat. Look what happened to his last patient. All over the fucking walls, man.
And the name of the unfortunate man here who has killed himself after struggling with a progressive illness that I was his named community nurse for is Joseph Kramer.
Aye, man, miss. I'll be off now before I catch any more of this.
You can catch this on the way, she observed, and punched him, nearly dislocating his jaw. Clutching his knob, Harris opened the French windows and shouted,
Time!
And the Conkers match broke up with a mixture of complaints about it never being 10 minutes and what a cheating cow Soames is.
a cheating cow.
So who's the stiff? Snorted Morose with a waggle of his undamaged jaw, just to piss Morose off, or Harris even.
One Joseph Kramer. He...
Morose took a huge step back that ended when he fell back out of the French window. He climbed back in, shaking and barely able to speak, which was welcomed by everyone. He did, however, manage to whisper, Joseph Kramer?
Aye, man. It seems...
But Morose had already apparently lost contact with everyone. He stood and looked out at the ducks in the pond. They all had alibis, just in case the silly git tried to pin it on them. Harris tried the soft approach.
Did you know him?
Morose dropped a veritable inflatable balloon worth of stomach gas before replying, "And don't mention the smell. I've already eaten a bar of Brute's soap. Should be perfect." "Yes, I knew him. His brother-in-law is Derek Small. Lives at 23 Partridge Grove. Kramer's wife is in London. Runs a knickers emporium. She has a flat."
Near side rear.
Morose gave Harris his best fuck-off look and continued, "Fuck off, Harris. I don't know the address of her flat in London. Get one of the piglets back at the sty to look it up, will you? I can't be arsed. Oh, and slip round to Partridge Grove, will you, and tell Small his brother-in-law's croaked at last."
At last?
Well, at the last time we saw him. Harris knocked at the door of a hideous 1960s outside bog.
Anyone home? I could do with a shit and that.
The back door to the equally hideous 1960s house opened. A butler, with the look of Max Wall, peered out. "Do you have to peer out of the door? There's a bloody bog here." He walked like Max Wall too. As he came up close to Harris, he gave that famous Max Wall sneer. "It's just, I have to mop it up."
Aye, I'm going in for a crap just now. Whilst I'm doing that, is Mr. Smarling?
"No, sir, he's in the house."
No, I didn't mean in the shitter, man. Plenty of paper in there.
"In the house?"
No, the shitter, man.
"Oh, yes, I keep it well stocked. Well, you never know, do you?"
Aye, well, listen. Whilst I'm in there, dropping the otters off at the pool and that, can you go and speak to Mr. Small?
"I can just stand back and whistle if you're embarrassed."
No, can you tell Mr. Small his brother-in-law's carked it?
"I can promise you I cleaned this toilet this morning."
No, he's a dead man.
"Is Mr. Small expecting you?"
I know, man. Just give him the message. I'm going in now, and maybe some time.
Harris flushed and emerged feeling a lot better. In addition to Wall the butler, Harris could see another gentleman stood behind him. For some reason, that gentleman had dragged a large piece of gym equipment into the garden behind him. It was a saddle attached to a sort of rodeo ride device. Mr. Wall was busy trying to run an extension cable back into the house. There was an embarrassed pause, and then a relatively minor explosion. A great pall of blue smoke emerged from the door, and Wall, skin freshly bleached and hair now set 3 foot higher than before, announced, "Right you are, Mr. Small. It's plugged in now."
Wacko!
cried Mr. Small, who jumped on the fucking ridiculous contraption, pressed a couple of buttons on a control panel, and the whole thing shook, blew vast amounts of smoke everywhere, and fell to bits. Small picked himself up.
You should try it. It keeps me fit.
Harris, trying not to laugh, grinned back.
I wouldn't know where to put it.
I think this one's for the incinerator.
Replied Small.
Now, who are you and what do you want? Eh?
My name is Sergeant Harris of Oxford Town and County Police, sir. I'm here to tell you your brother-in-law has shot his brains out all over his room. Right fucking mess it is too. I mean, you can hardly call it a living room anymore. God, you want to see it, man?
Small scratched his knob. His own knob, that is.
Is he dead?
Harris took a go at his own as well.
Aye, man.
Shot himself?
Aye, man.
My doctor said he had a year to live.
Bullets don't travel that slow, sir.
True, you are quite correct. Are you sure you don't want to go on my horse simulator?
Aye, positive the simulated here would cost a fucking fortune. Have you got his wife's address in London, like?
Small put on his smoking jacket, which was indeed still smouldering.
Wouldn't you prefer...
Wouldn't you prefer it here? London's over 50 miles away. I've got her address, yes, but better than that, I'll drive down and get her to Josh's place right now. Are you pig fellows at the house now?
All except one, sir.
Oh, where's he?
Interviewing some loon with a horse fetish, sir.
Capital. I must meet him. Sounds like a right top bloke. I'll get Katie right there as fast as possible. What hell?
Thanks, man. Can you get to bring the vacuum cleaner too?
Whatever for?
You want to see the state of the place, man? It's a right fucking mess. Brits are braying all over the shop, man. It's a...
3 police cars screeched to a halt outside Oxford Police Station as 6 policemen bundled 3 criminals through the main doors. One, still wearing his balaclava, screamed,
"You'll never get me to confess, pig!"
before receiving a sharp kick to the nads from one of the plainclothes officers as they bundled them into the station. This all looked very exciting. which is a pity because it's not connected to our story at all.
2 hours later, a Range Rover parked up outside the station and 2 people got out. The first we've already seen, Mr. Derek Small. He held a hand out to support his sister, the other person, who 1 hour ago had been told the dreadful news of the death of her husband. Inside, Robbie was going over the fine details of the case with Colin Weird.
Oh man, the state of that room, I've only just finished throwing up.
Morose looked up from a Victoria Wines catalogue.
If I might say, young Robbie, it ruddy well honked.
Aye, I'll pour some industrial strength bleach on the next one, shall I?
He turned back to Weird.
Honestly, sir, if you're going to send us out to scenes like that, man, I'm going back on the buses.
Jampton popped his head round the door, a neat trick as he was stood at front desk 80 yards away, but then he was a very gifted officer. Sorry, lads, sir. That wall decorator's wife's turned up with her brother. I've popped him in interview room 1.
Morose tore his eyes away from a very nice-looking special edition Jack Daniels.
What was wrong with the wrong voice? I'll try again. What was wrong with interview room 7?
I quite liked him as a brummie, actually. You're on again.
Bruce is interviewing some pensioners in there. I'm losing it.
Shrugs Hugh.
While I remember, they've parked their Range Rover in the disabled bay. As soon as the interview starts, I'll get Terry to tow it away. When you've done, we can go to the waste ground by Milligan Way and practice donuts. There's a restaurant there now, opened a couple of years ago,
said Morose.
We'll go up Bentine Close. There's a lovely abandoned piece there by the old dog food factory where the Fallers at Newmarket went to.
Thumbs up from Jampton, to the disgust of everyone else. Weird made a mental note to have a word with Hugh later. Robbie entered interview room 1, followed by Morose. Katie turned round to face the door and, on seeing Morose, almost collapsed. Her brother steadied her as she whispered,
Enough.
No, just before start of.
Robbie switched on the new microphone system recently installed by a couple of children.
Interview commencing at 1954. That's 10 to 8 in pre-decimal times. In attendance, myself, Sergeant Robbie Harris, Chief Inspector End of Level Demon Morose, Mrs. Katie Kramer and Mr. Derek Small.
Katie looked slightly puzzled.
Am I under arrest, Sergeant?
Robbie looked up from his papers.
Oh no, man, get away. You've got enough to worry about redecorating that study after your husband had to go. No, this is just a formality, like.
Robbie looked down at his notes again.
Perhaps I could ask by asking what luxury you could take to the island.
And for those wanting that in English, perhaps I could start by asking what luxury you'd like to take to the island.
Aye, man, aye, man.
Katie looked first at Robbie, then her brother, and finally in desperation at Morose. Morose cleared his throat, and as an afterthought his back passage. Robbie, you're doing it again. You're not hosting Desert Island Discs. You never have.
Oh, sorry, I keep doing that lately.
Muttered Robbie.
Has your husband ever tried the old shotgun mouthwash trick before? Well, you know, dangling from a light fitting, chuck himself off the pier, took a swim in the Tyne, that sort of thing?
Katie looked cold.
If you mean has he ever attempted suicide?
Aye.
Then no.
But you've caught him looking longingly at the pill cabinet a few times, eh?
He was terminally ill, Sergeant. It's not completely unexpected.
So you think it may have been suicide?
Asked Morose.
Yes!
They all shouted back at him. Morose turned to Robbie.
Sorry to waste your evening out.
The coroner's court in Oxford was hardly the sort of place to make one feel good. Or even a doctor. Today, just to add to the misery factor, the inquest into the death of the late Josh Kramer was proceeding, well, staggering along just about. Nurse Clark was finishing her testimony.
It was after I'd clouted the bastard with my concrete mixer that I finally got back into my 1200cc frog eye, and that was the last I heard of it until I got the call off the fascists. And what time was that?
Asked the droll, monotonous tones of the coroner.
Oh, definitely before the evening. I was only on to my 3rd glass. Thank you, Nurse Clark. I shall not be needing to ask you anything else. Can I call the next witness, Sergeant Robbie Harris of the Oxford City Police Force Protection Crew?
Harris took the stand to one side of the court and began.
Well, I was on my way home and that, and we got a call to attend a shooting lake. And when we got there, it was like fucking vile, man. I almost threw me hoop up. There was blood and snot and gory like shit all over the fucking place. I mean, what a fucking mess. This twerp had no consideration for others. How can anyone do their job in those conditions? It's beyond me.
Yes, thank you, Sergeant Harris.
It was fucking right, man. It well.
Yes, thank you, Sergeant.
And the curtains, don't ask me about the curtains. Man, they were positively draped.
Get this frothing clown out of here, Mr. Grimley.
Mr. Grimley, a huge 7-foot man with 7 feet,
Don't believe
lifted
it.
Robbie off the scruff of the arse and carried him out. There was a thud and a shout of pain, followed by the sounds of stairs coming up to meet a body.
Ka-thunk, ka-thunk, ka-thunk.
Mr. Grimley returned and sat down by the door, fondling a large club with spikes in the top.
Next witness, can I call the wife of the deceased, Mrs. Katie Kramer?
Kate took the stand back to the correct place and began her testimony.
I had a phone call off my brother to say that he'd have to consider selling his mechanical horse as it was all done in. And by the way, my husband had died.
Were you at all surprised by this news?
Not at all, no. The mechanical horse has only ever brought in piles and a strained testicle.
Yes. What about your husband's death?
Well, it wasn't unexpected, was it? He knew he was dying, and he always said that when it got unbearable, he would take the necessary steps.
The necessary steps?
Yes, the ones that we keep in the shed to get his nut job of a brother back on the mechanical horse. He always considered us like that, which is probably why he shot himself. He didn't want to be a drain on us.
There was a scuffle at the courtroom door and a voice shouting,
But he didn't bloody consider me very well then, did he? I ate that sort of blood thing, man. Jesus wept about nightmares about it.
There was a crash from Mr. Grimley's club and a loud groan. Call the next witness, Mr. Max Pathos. Max took the stand and examined it carefully before realising everyone was watching him being a prick.
Just checking clues. You can never be too careful.
Mr. Pathos, you are the police pathologist.
Yes.
Can you describe your findings?
Well, there was blood all over the place. It was utterly horrific, like something out of a Victorian bloodfest. I've never been so insulted in all my life. I've never been...
The coroner sat back, closed his eyes, and tried to think of Nurse Clark, without her clothes.
Very good.
And that concludes tonight's extract.
Yes. Next, a thought for the day.
That was a good one.
Yes, it was, rather, yes. What was the story this was based on, sorry?
Dead on Time, I think
Dead
it's
on
called.
Time,
isn't
okay, that'll do.
it? Okay.
If you've not seen Dead on Time, don't. It's utterly miserable and depressing.
You're not allowed to say that.
If you've never seen Dead on Time, it's fucking brilliant. Go and watch it now. It's on iPlayer or YouTube or something.
So Imogen has
Disney
been
Channel.
enduring listening to that while we've gone through it. So
You can make an appearance, yes.
Imogen is going to supply some of our female voices
switch it
going
off.
forward.
Oh, okay.
Hello.
This is Imogen.
This is Imogen.
Hi. They're both awful, by the way.
We try our best to be.
Yeah. Dear God.
So there we go. Yes, indeed. Dear God. Yes.
Dear God.
Her God was with us as we did that.
yes.
We were behind us there. We've got Jesus watching us right now. Yeah.
It's a crow.
Yeah.
It passes for a god anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it for now, folks.
Yes. Don't forget, keep it heavy and keep it metal.
And may your crow go with you.
Indeed.